we hack the code and flip the tag. Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet. Hey.
Hello and welcome to Unconventional Wisdom, about conventional wisdom. I'm your host, Kim Miller-Hershon. I'm excited to talk to Paul Shrater today. He's an interesting guy, that I promise you. So let me tell you a little bit about him, and then we will let him speak for himself. He is, I think, really the epitome of a true entrepreneur. He is an owner or a co-owner of over a dozen companies and brands in e-commerce, third-party logistics and fulfillment, contract packaging in food, beauty, promotional items, food service distribution, joint ventures, supplements. I have to take a breath. Homeopathic, art, and TikTok talent brand management. They have a physical space, which is over 150,000 square feet. He is a Wharton School graduate, and he is going to just regale us with all of his wisdom and fun stories today. So welcome, Paul.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Who is that? Who is that guy?
Yeah, who is that guy? Sounds cool.
He sounds really
You're hired as my
impressive.
publicist.
Yeah. All right. My random question for you today is, what is the most interesting thing about you that nobody knows?
That I have a pet rabbit. No, one of the ones I have a friend who introduces me this way to people is the guy who put fruitcake into space. And actually, an article was even written about this. But our e-commerce company for 20 years has been supplying NASA with their condiment packets like ketchup, mustard, hot sauce, that kind of thing, but cheese and hummus and other stuff. But one day NASA called and said, hey, we have a problem. We have an astronaut who wants fruitcake for the holidays, but we're a government agency and it can't have alcohol in it. And they all use rum to preserve fruitcake. So can you help us find a fruitcake that doesn't use alcohol, doesn't use rum? So I said, all right, challenge accepted. And I called every fruitcake manufacturer in the United States. They all use rum. And I start then looking globally, and I find an abbey of monks in the United Kingdom who for 400 years in their commercial bakery have been making fruitcake without rum, but preserved for the length of time that NASA needed it. And they shipped over some free fruitcakes to the NASA food lab in the past, goes up to space. Astronaut loves it, emails the monks from space, thanking them for the delicious fruitcake. And they were all excited. I got them permission from NASA to the PR office to talk about it. And then 2 years later, the astronaut went up again and wanted his fruitcake. And the monks charged me this time, but fair price. But so yeah, twice I've shipped fruitcake into space.
I will say that is unique. I don't think there's a whole lot of maybe anybody else who can say that they have that distinction.
And it's a good sourcing challenge to say there's a way to make things happen and figure it out. Yeah.
That's right. I think, and it's interesting because I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit, but that mentality of I'll figure it out, there really is a solution to everything.
It's easier with AI now to figure it out.
Isn't that the truth?
Yes.
It's so interesting that you say that because we had an editing challenge with some video that we were doing that, and we might even talk about this. I know on the podcast I've talked about this before, how as the leader of the company, you really have to give yourself a different job description. In other words, you have to stop doing all the things that you have always done. You also have to give up some of the things that you're good at in order to have that higher value. How it came up for us is that we have a marketing piece that needed to go out fairly quickly. And we had some video testimonials. And my team member gave them to the guy doing the landing page unedited. And they were very long. And I was like, that isn't what we're going for here. And I had that experience of, oh my God, am I going to have to do this myself? Because I can is not the best use of my time. And son of a gun, If we didn't get in a meeting and use the little AI tool in the
Yep.
ask in the program that we used, ask for highlights, and I will tell you, we did the entire editing and work that needed to be done in 10 minutes.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Especially for research, it's some of the most basic uses of
Right.
it right now. But for researching, like if I'm trying to find a vendor for something, I can be like, give me 10 companies that do the following, list their contact information,
Yeah.
and make sure they're in the US, whatever my parameters are. And
Right.
then in a second, here's your places. And
Yeah.
sometimes it gets certain ones wrong or whatever, but cut down on 3 hours of Google searching and picking through. So
Right.
there's definitely for research like that, it's great.
And just a little tip here for our listeners. I think some things that people forget because it's not Google. So I think what you forget is that you can actually have a conversation with it, right? So if you asked the question originally and you either didn't get good output or you forgot to put a parameter in, that you can actually just go back and say, consider this or do
Right.
this.
Look at it from a certain perspective.
That's
Like, oh,
right.
look at this from the other side and what would they say?
And I'm just trying to think. I'm looking at my bookshelf, except that it was an audiobook, so that's not going to help me. And we'll put the name of the author in the show notes because I can't think of it on my own because I want to give credit where credit is due here. But one of the best tips that I use all the time is when I ask AI to do something for me, I will tell it what I want it to do. And then I got this, I think it's called AI Leadership from a book that gave me this instruction. I put what I want and I say, before you give me the answer, ask me up to 10 questions, one at a time for clarity. And here's the listeners, the most important thing that I just said is one at a time. Because if you don't ask for it one at a time, it's going to ask you 10 questions all at once. So that's not a good plan, but it's a really interesting way. And I think,
Yeah, yeah, the general thing what you're talking about is to get a good response from AI, you have to know how to craft your
that's right.
prompt or your question. And it's not a singular question you have to ask. You have to give it a lot of parameters, which are parameters your brain is already calculating, but you have to now tap into that and be able to articulate all those parameters that you do instinctively. You have to map it out. But if you can't figure out how to map it out, you can ask it to say, what are the questions I should be asking you to craft a prompt to get this desired result? And then it will say, oh, you need to consider these things. And then you're like, oh, okay, now I'll put those into my main prompt. So you can take a step back before taking that step forward to then
Right.
have it help you.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. That's good advice,
Oh,
right?
that's what you're
Like,
talking about. It's
right.
just,
But I think this idea of conversing, right? Of the collaborative going using AI or whatever platform you use as a thought partner versus just a give me the answer.
add that on something I was researching recently, and I gave it this long thing. It's also great at the end to say, by the way, do you want me to consider blah? It gives you some pathways to take, and you got to look at those. Sometimes people just glaze over that because they read the content and like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And I did that, and then the answer was, oh, that makes all the difference in the world. Now let me do it this way. And then they're like, and by the way, does it happen to have this and this? And then I'm like, oh yeah, and now it went even deeper. That changes it.
Right.
Following it is helping you refine stuff too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting so sophisticated. Okay. So let me ask you this. From the man who put fruitcake into space, what is one piece of conventional business wisdom that you followed early on only to really figure out that it was not the right thing for you?
I would say it's one of the classic business mantras is to focus on one thing and do it really well. And in a more so now than ever before, things are moving and changing at a fast pace. And if you don't you like pivot and follow like where the opportunities are, you could become the next Blockbuster, is the example everybody uses, where just it passes you by. And I launched an e-commerce business in 2004 when people were trusting putting their credit cards online for the first time. And I love businesses that capture like those societal shifts and changes. And but at the same time, this was before Amazon became Amazon. I
Right.
saw where that was headed. And I was like, oh, this is eventually gonna take out what we're doing because we were just a reseller. It's going to become the reseller of all resellers. So when people were coming at us thinking we manufactured everything we were selling, and I was like, no, we don't. We're just a reseller, but let me see if I can help you. And I went to the contract packaging industry and realized that they predate the internet. And so they're used to, like back in the days, to be an entrepreneur, you had to have serious capital. And
Right.
all of a sudden, it was easier and cheaper to be an entrepreneur with e-commerce. Yet the factories had million piece minimums because they had big $1 million high speed equipment. So I was like, ooh, there needs to be a scaling facility. So I launched Minimus Products at minimusproducts.biz, which is a contract packaging facility unique in the country in that we do food, supplements, beauty, personal care, liquids, powders, particulates, packets, stick packs, bottles, jars, cans, bags, kosher certified, organic certified. We can do OTC for topicals and things. A wide variety of capabilities, but very entrepreneurial minded to try and adapt and add equipment or capability based on what clients were needing so we could scale them from semi-automatic to fully automatic equipment and provide that service. So had I focused on just e-commerce as Amazon went up and we went down with that business, it would have been problematic. But what happens is, so we start making people's minis because our e-commerce brand was basically the Amazon of miniature things. So travel size toiletries, single serving food items, 2,500 SKUs. So it was like the superstore of miniatures. People were like, great, now make my full sizes. But you do your own fulfillment, both direct to consumer and wholesale down the street. So can you do fulfillment for me too? And I was like, sure, why not? And then we ended up in the 3PL, third party logistics fulfillment business. And I was like, oh, there's another opportunity happening in this industry because that entire industry predated e-commerce, which meant products were bought at retail stores, which meant the warehouses that service the brands were pallets coming in, pallets going out. It wasn't pick and pack individual orders
Right.
unless you're somebody who remembers this year's catalog or things like that. There were very few things that were actually pick and pack. And it's a whole different skill set, staffing need, talking to your client every day, like being nimble to sticker this for Amazon or put this in a baggie or, oh, this has to rush out for a press opportunity. Very entrepreneurial minded and needed to be nimble and know how to adapt to that. So that worked out really well because then we could have a lot of small brands, medium-sized brands, a lot of high-profile celebrities who also needed that support because they didn't have a big operational infrastructure with their products. That became another sort of pivot extension again to answer your question from that original wisdom of focus on that one thing. Had we just done e-commerce, Amazon became Amazon and we weren't a brand, we were a reseller. So now all of a sudden we're providing all these sort of picks and shovels services to a industry that is exploding called e-commerce and being able to bring that kind of mindset of supporting the entrepreneur having come out of doing it
Hmm.
ourselves. And that led into all the other businesses that you were talking about too, where that continued to be like, oh, there's a need over here in this industry, there's a need over here to do this. And so kept adding sort of businesses based on seeing those societal shift in those
Hmm.
needs.
You seem to be fairly good at seeing trends, right? Or anticipating needs or seeing opportunities and being able to capitalize on them. Do you think that takes a particular mindset, skill set, nimbleness? What do you think it is about you that allows you to do that?
I think it's talking to a lot of people and paying attention and understanding that you want to always be learning. And there's a learning mindset to, I want to learn more about. I just had a meeting this morning with someone from China that was over here. It's Chinese New Year, and we're partnered with them on some stuff. And I was learning a lot about how the Chinese economy is going and the factories and the mindset. And we're talking about I have a TikTok marketing agency. And we're talking about things we can do like with live selling in China, where they're 5 years ahead of us. and doing that and how it's culturally different there versus here, and
Yeah.
how folks from China that were brought over by TikTok are doing it the Chinese way here, and it's missing the mark in certain areas, and how do we adapt that in the US market? So again, trying to learn about something that isn't as easy to have access to, but I'm sitting right with somebody who has a lot of that awareness also, to then
Hmm.
figure out, both of us trying to figure out how do we do business that can solve some of these things. So I think it's always just asking questions and listening and paying attention, reading articles on your phone, and just trying to learn as much as you can about what's happening out there and where the opportunities are. And
So do you have business partners in these different things, or how you are you
most of them
structured?
I most of them I don't. Most of the businesses are sort of family businesses that all grew organically from the original 500 square feet, four shelves, a computer, and no employees, and me as a side hustle from my previous career in film and TV as a producer and writer. But the TikTok agency, I'm partnered with a couple of guys from China that were brought over by TikTok to help with that about a year and a half ago, when really they were pushing e-commerce here on TikTok in the US.
Mm,
And so that one, it's actually super helpful to have that. That again, they're 5 years ahead of live selling and social commerce and all that than we are
mhm.
here in the US. So learning what's working there, what's not working, and then also being able to adapt that, which is why they wanted a US partner to adapt to US culture and US business
Right.
culture, because there is differences not just in culture, but just in evolution and timing of the industry. And so that's been helpful to have a partner there. I'm launching a big venture studio with a handful of partners all around high profile celebrities and creators who want to be entrepreneurs and have a consumer products brand. And we become their operational business partner, investor into that, and have the team to manage
Right.
and do it soup to nuts, because I have the infrastructure companies to do e-commerce, manufacturing, marketing. We have one of
Right.
our general partners is at a big national sales rep firm, and other ones at a technology company. So we have all the pieces together to execute on being their partner on that. So in that one, it's super helpful to have those partners. And I've been lucky in a few other businesses in the past to have really strong partners on things. So
Yeah.
yes.
I really like that. And I will just tell you, I've had other guests on the show who have said basically the exact opposite of you. They have said, my best advice to you is do one thing and do one thing well
Right.
and go deep, which I think is my whole point about this podcast, which is there's lots of ways to be successful, right? And this works for you. My guess is that just how you're talking, like you are somebody who sees connections, right? You're just like, you can just pull it all together. And other people are like, I got to focus on
Right.
one thing
And
and
it depends, yeah, and it depends what it is you want to do. And like right now, for somebody who's like really into marketing, they have a marketing background, they don't really want to be an entrepreneur or whatever, and they are launching a TikTok agency or something. I'd be like, great, lean into that. Like it's cutting edge, like it's gonna grow. That's your thing. Now maybe their pivot is they add on average doing selling on Whatnot or Amazon or whatever. But it's still like the core of what it is they're doing is the same. Yeah, I would say for a lot of people that like going deep on something and being really good at, especially if you're at the beginning of an industry, it has the potential to be huge because you can capitalize on that. And the brands that adapted or got early onto TikTok Shop are doing so well now, it's very hard to replicate the level of success they have without a
mm,
lot more money because of the saturation that started to
right.
happen. Whereas early on, everybody was wanting to be an affiliate and help market brands on there and doing it for commission only. And there's a top selling brand in there that has like 75,000 affiliates and they're doing over $100 million a year just on TikTok Shop. To do that now, to get 75,000 affiliates, not as easy as back then to do. Now it's go get 75 affiliates is like a
Yeah. Yeah.
challenge.
Who are
But
actually can sell stuff.
right, yeah.
Right.
So it's getting in early on something and going deep on that definitely
Mhm.
has its benefits.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right. You clearly are a successful leader. What's one thing that people think that you've got all figured out on the outside and on the inside you still wrestle with it?
I'm going to give you a weird answer to that question. because there's an element that relates to a question I know you're going to ask later, but the I would say untapped potential that, and I think it's the hallmark of somebody who really has that kind of internal drive as an entrepreneur where it's not about the money, it's about growing something and solving problems, and that's the motivation. Yes, money can come from that, but that's not really the driving force. The driving force is you see things that can be better and grow and improve, and that's what motivates you. So from the outside, you may be like, oh, you're a successful entrepreneur, you made it. And to me, it's no, I still seen this and I haven't done this yet. And we need to achieve here. We're down here and the opportunity's here. And that is an answer I actually give people when people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that Bill Gates or Elon Musk or whatever, like, why do these people still do what they do and work 60, 80, 100 hours a week when they're some of the richest people in the world? I'm like, because money is not their driving force.
Right.
It's the idea that there's still more to achieve, there's still more problems to solve, there's still more. That is the motivator. It's not about the money. And by the way, that's why they got to the point of being it. So that, I would say, it's that untapped potential is what other people will be like, oh, you're successful, you should be vacationing and doing that. I'm like, no, to me it feels like a still scratching the surface.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to say something I don't think I've ever said on this podcast before. Where that comes up for me is that every so often in the back of my mind, it will be like, you're too old. I don't need society telling me I'm too old. I can give myself those messages. And like,
Never
people
too
are
old.
like, exactly.
Well, yeah.
But
There's
you know what I'm saying, right? Like that sort of,
I'll go the opposite. I'll say that one of the things I've learned in life and discovered is that I'll do it by decades of life. So somebody who's in their 20s cannot understand the wisdom of somebody in their 30s, who can't understand the wisdom of somebody in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So until you're there. And when you're there, you're like, oh, that's like it. Things start to make sense about life
Mhm.
or that you just can't conceive when you're younger
Right.
because you don't have this life wisdom. So when people who are older are like, oh, I'm aged out of the job market, who actually, by the way, is phenomenal and would work with him in a second because he has such experience that is invaluable. And so people who are older, who have that wisdom and experience about even just life, never mind a specific skill set or an industry, there's value in that. And that value can be put towards a lot of different things. So it's never too late. On the contrary, you've accumulated more expertise and wisdom and knowledge to probably avoid going off in the wrong direction and making
Yeah.
mistakes that other people may do. You may make tactical mistakes because just anybody would at any age getting into an industry. But at this point, usually you're smart enough to understand what you need to do to prevent against that by
That's
bringing
right.
in partners or advisors or
Right.
whatever it may be.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about what you're saying is that I am publishing a book later this year, which is so exciting. And what's very interesting about writing this book, because it is about shockingly, it's about unconventional wisdom and conventional wisdom. It won't have that title, but that is
Mhm.
essentially the subject of the book. What is fascinating is that I have enough of this in my head that I can sit down and just put my thoughts out there, right? And I had started to write a book about productivity a number of years ago, and I never finished it. And what's really interesting about it is that I think at that time I read a lot. And so it was very hard for me to distinguish what were my own thoughts, right? Versus am I just regurgitating somebody else's IP basically, right? Fast forward 15 years later, first of all, I'm not trying to write the same book, but I do marvel really. Like I was doing some writing this weekend and I was just like, I am just sitting here and just emptying out my head, right? Oh my God. Like how cool is that? And who knew? Anyway, yeah.
Well, and by taking a special niche focus within the business category of unconventional wisdom means you're more attuned to it. Everything you read out there, news
Right,
articles, whatever, it's in your head. You're looking for that angle. The
right,
conversations like ours, your questions are geared towards pulling at it. So the stuff that you have in your head about that unconventional wisdom is going to be different than what might just be
Yeah.
regurgitating from some generalist business book out there. You've collated all kinds of concepts and ideas that
Right.
putting them in one place
Yeah.
makes sense. Would be interesting. I think an interesting read. I'm pre-endorsing it.
Yeah. And thank you. All right. So if you could rewrite the rule book on leadership, what's one outdated belief that you would throw out the window and what would you replace it with?
It's an interesting question because, like, in terms of leadership, I don't know that there's much that's changed. Some of the things about leadership for thousands of years have all been the same. So, to make it a slightly more tactical, I think, as an experience that I've had that may be beneficial for people, that I realized was most people look at everybody else around them and assume they have the same worldview or outlook or whatever that they do, and that they see life is the same way. And that may be true, or you're close enough when the people around you have a similar mindset. So companies, so a lot of business books are written for companies that have professionals who are trying to climb the ladder and do better and make bigger salaries, and they're six-figure minded people, and or they're in a creative or executive level thing. When you're in like a warehouse environment or something that is not that, a lot of that business wisdom is different. And there's not a lot of books written about that type of business wisdom and how to be a leader or pay attention. I have employees who do not want to get promoted. Been here for 10 years, would easily be promoted, do a fantastic job. They don't want the stress. Their life is their life, their work is their work. It's not what's important to them in life. It's mind-boggling to have that mentality and try and put yourself into somebody's shoes like that. But as somebody who, is a leader in that environment, you have to be able to think that way and recognize that what they value in life may be a simple compliment or a simple sign of respect of something, or the ability for them to take off and do stuff with their kids or family when they need to and not feel that there's this rigid time structure they have to be here. That means the world to them. So there's a lot of other aspects that are different for different people because the way they view things, life and the world is different. And so most people go through life assuming everybody else around them is the same. It's the same with social media is doing that. It's becoming a mirror of you. And so your feeds on TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, whatever, the algorithm starts to build around who you are and what you're interested in. Your belief is that everybody else sees those same things, those same news stories, those same posts, those same opinions and all that. So you assume that everybody else sees those same things. It's not. It's a customized thing just for your brain and the way you are. But because it feels like TV, like looking at your phone, you assume that is the same for everybody. It's not. They have a completely different algorithm where stuff that seems obvious to you, like how could you not know that this was done out there in this country or this situation or whatever, they could be completely oblivious to that what happened or have a completely different take on it, a different spin. Part of the reason why the country gets further apart is because this news has become customized in an echo chamber. So that I think relates back to again that idea of getting out of that and recognizing there's all kinds of people. Every point of view like that is valid. You just have to learn to adapt and recognize it and know how to work with that. And yeah,
Mhm.
that's my long
Right.
answer to
And
your short question.
no, that's okay. I think, Paul, you bring up such an interesting, I think, point of view, which is that I think in leadership and management, and I think just in society in general, there's a lot of judgment on negative connotation to what do you mean you just want to be a warehouse worker? You don't want to be a TikTok star. You don't want to be an influencer, right? You don't want to be an entrepreneur, an executive. And I think it's not just how do we lead those people, but I think how do we make it so that it's not judgy.
And by the way, one of the interesting points that is they may lead a happier life than the billionaire.
There you go.
The billionaire who's never satisfied, or things are about money, or whatever it is. You hear all the time about these miserable wealthy people
Right.
versus somebody who may be all about valuing genuine human connections.
Right.
More important than a job and money is they're out doing things with friends, or they're out going hiking, or whatever it is. All different things that they find that life means for them can
Right.
make a happier life than the pursuit of advancement and money
Right.
and all that. So once you understand that it's not like a value judgment, that unless you're trying to move up, then you're not. They may have figured it out. They may have figured out the secret of life, of
Yeah.
happiness and all that. I never, again, I have my way I view things that works for me. It's not the
Mhm.
same for everybody else. And
Right.
so that's,
Right. I think in being able, that's just one example of a difference, right? I think really so much of my entire coaching practice is about leaders who do things their own way, not because they necessarily think it's the right way. They just haven't really thought about how their actions affect other people. They haven't really put themselves in somebody else's shoes and thought about how they want to be, how they will receive communication or how they want to be communicated to. And again, there's no judgment about that. I think it's natural, right? Like we always come from our own point of view. And by the way, Paul, you have crushed my world because do you mean that everybody doesn't see all the puppies on Instagram?
no,
Because
I get rabbit videos because I have a pet rabbit.
I'm like, come on. If you're not looking at the puppies and the fosters that get adopted, you are missing out, friends. But that's maybe a conversation for another day. I also did see a fabulous cat like interior design recently. Somebody who, yeah. So there you go. And I should probably put my phone away because you know that now Instagram is going to double down on it now that it heard me
Rabbit
speak.
videos, rabbit videos, rabbit
Yeah.
videos.
Okay, sorry, I'm getting off the subject here. But I think the point really is this idea of not just leading from your own point of view. The other thing is, too, which comes up a lot, is my vision is clear. What I want you to do is clear. I ask you, I say it to everybody. I ask you if you understand, and you say yes. So then I assume that you understand it how I meant it. And if I don't ask what you heard, you will very often get something very different than
Yeah.
you expected, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So lots of interesting things. But thank you for bringing that up because I do think that it's a really a valid point of not everybody has to have the same values of you to be valuable, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. In fact, having a diversity of thought and approaches probably makes for a better system and a better environment if you can make it harmonious. The
Right.
one thing I did learn, I'm sure there's been something written about this, and I made up the phrases myself, but there's people and process people. And the two have a very tough time understanding each other. Meaning,
Absolutely.
people person, they need that, hey, how's it going in the morning when you pass by them in the hallway. The process person could care less about that and is all about solving the problem and getting to the goal. If you focus on solving the problem and getting to the goal without saying, hey, how are you when you walk by them in the hallway, the people person is they don't like me, they hate me, horrible day, screw this. And if you do that to the process person, they're like, why are you wasting my time with all this chit chat?
Yeah.
Let's solve the
I got
problem.
problems to solve.
Yeah, and very hard for the two to understand each
Yeah.
other or even work together in a lot of situations. So recognizing when someone is strongly in one direction or another, how to adapt how you work with them
Hmm.
as a leader is
Yeah.
different. The person you need to make sure you say hi to versus the person you're like, let's get down to
Right.
solving the task. So being able to adapt and understand people's different
Right.
approaches to life is important.
Absolutely. That is what DISC, which is something that I'm certified in, how I use it. One of the things that I do is teach people how to read other people. There's a really quite a simple formula for being able to read it, so you don't have to make a mistake in order to figure it out. It's really quite easy. And then you can start really communicating with people how they prefer to be communicated with. Things run much more smoothly that way. So, what's one unconventional habit or mindset shift that's helped you grow your business?
I would say that for several years, I was heads down, just here at the company working on operational stuff. And at some point, I taught a class at the local university. It was just an idea I had where I tried to build a custom class where they could do like real life marketing for my company and have it be like a
Mm,
real cool hands-on marketing experience because I had one like that in college. And because of that, I got invited to an event like at their they have an entrepreneurial center kind of thing.
mhm.
And so like I started speaking on panels there at their events, and then there was this like a spin-off group from that was about local entrepreneurs getting together for lunch once a month. And I started going to that and meeting people. And like from that, I've hired employees, done business with people, found vendors for stuff, found a business partner on something. So I was like, there's a huge value in networking when you take your head
Mm,
out of just working at the stuff at your company that has long-term value. And especially if you do it from the perspective of not seeking out like a specific like
right.
need that you're trying to accomplish. You're not out there just selling, which is what in some of those environments you find certain service people do. If you're an insurance salesperson or somebody like that is in a pure sort of like they're out there like prospecting for customers. Smart networkers know, hey, they do it by helping other people, making connections for them, building that kind of collegial friendship kind of thing where then when I do need that kind of vendor, that actually was a question. I was a guest speaker at one of these professional networking groups where it's like attorneys and insurance salespeople and financial advisors, and they're all in the same like thing, and they all make referrals to each other. And they asked me as like the guest speaker, hey, you're an entrepreneur. What were the things that you did to pick your vendors in our spaces? And I said, it was the ones who worked with me for free when I couldn't afford to pay them. That when I
Mhm.
could, those were the ones I worked with. And immediately it was half of the room was like, oh my gosh, that's totally worked for me and my practice. And that's how I get a lot of my customers. And the other people like, I don't work for free. Screw that. That's a waste of my time and money. And there was a huge argument. But I think when you have the mindset of just karmically putting it out there, hey, I'm going to help people, I'm going to make connections, I'm going to,
Right.
hey, look, you should talk to this guy over here or whatever, and I'm not trying to insert myself and get a commission or a fee or whatever, unless
Right.
it's something where I'm truly like having to put in work and add value on a longer basis or whatever. But if I'm just linking people up, then eventually I've found over time, and sometimes I think it took probably a year before like I was like, oh my gosh, like this person who I spoke to had a friend who could end up using my service, and they referred them to me as a thing. And it was just kept happening over and over. Very small bites here and there, but over years, I said you look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, just from just a few of these little networking things, it's added all kinds of value. And I didn't
Mhm.
approach it by, ooh, you're important or you're not important, or trying to put value judgments on the people. It was just like, hey, I'm here and here's what I do and here's how I can help. And that comes back to you
Right.
without even intending it.
And I love the idea of going to an event like that and be like thinking that you're how to be a connector, right? How to be of service, how to be of value. And I think part of that is really listening, right? One of the things that I like to do when I meet somebody at a networking event, and listen, you don't want to be obnoxious about this. So if somebody says to you first, tell me about you, what I like to do is I like to say, just, I'm a business coach and a corporate trainer. Tell me a little bit more about you, right? Because I don't think that you can add the value or figure out what the connections are until you learn a little bit more about who they are and what they need, right?
And my question to you would be, what's your angle about being that business coach that you find has added the most value or makes you different than any other business coach
Mhm.
that I would want to hire? And then you would say, oh, I really focus on such and such
Right.
and then that would trigger something in me, be like, somebody I just met needs help with that aspect.
Right.
Until I learn more details to know how to link it up,
That's right.
it's too generic.
And well, I think, Paul, you are really honing in on something that seems natural to you, but is really quite subtle. And I see people mess this up all the time. Is if you want to make meaningful and good connections for people, then you do need to know a little bit more, not just about kind of whatever the need is, but who is a good provider for that? What's
Right.
important to you about that? Because I know 3 employment attorneys, I know 5 employment attorneys, but who do you need to work with? Right. And then I can make a better connection for you versus just connecting you to the first person who comes to mind.
Yeah,
Right.
like, as you were talking about attorneys as an example, like talking to recently like an IP, like patent type attorney, and I'm like, oh, what's your like specialty? Or, oh, I focus on software and oh, okay. So I log that away, and now months later, someone comes to me and goes, hey, do you know any software patent attorney? I'm like, ah, I got the guy,
I got the
because it
guy.
wasn't just I'm a patent attorney or an IP attorney. I'm the one with a software
Right.
focus. So now it feels like a better
That's
match
right.
than one out of five IP
Right.
attorneys that I might know, to your point.
That's right. And I do think as well, like coming from a place of abundance around these things versus like scarcity, right? So somebody recently actually referred something to me. She heard about an opportunity, right? And she's, hey, Kim, because they were looking for a coach, right? But here's the thing is that it was very sweet of her to send it to me, but it's not actually the kind of coaching that I do. But what's great is that I was like, I know a coach who this is
Right.
a better fit for, right? And I don't know about you. I think I'm successful because I know what I do. I know
Uh-huh.
what I do well, and I know what is not in
Uh-huh.
my, I suppose, could I try to make a case for it? I don't know, probably, but it's not really, it's not
Right.
what I want to do.
You're better off referring to that person, and who knows, down the road, maybe they have a referral for you. You
Exactly.
know.
Yeah. That person actually sent me, I didn't end up getting the business, but I will tell you, I think it might be one of the coolest referrals that I ever got, which I was surprised that my husband thought it was a cool referral. But I got an opportunity to put together a program for prisoners at San Quentin Prison who were needed some communication skills. They were having trouble communicating with each other. And it was literally going on site and doing this training, which I was like, that is
It's
actually,
different.
that's different. Yeah. What ended up happening is they found a nonprofit who would do it for free. So I couldn't compete with that. But
Right.
I thought it was a pretty cool referral.
Yeah. Yeah. You never
Yeah.
know.
You never know. Okay, sorry, I digress. I told
Oh,
you before we started this today that I was in a wacky mood. So,
sometimes digressions are the best nuggets of
yeah,
wisdom and
yeah.
advice.
Yeah. So, we're not done, but takeaways so far from this podcast are you have put 2 fruitcakes into space, and I proposed business at San Quentin Prison. Okay?
Yep.
So, we're the bomb.
I've got a lot of random stories too.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So many leaders battle with imposter syndrome. And what I really mean about imposter syndrome is those sort of places, like those situations where you get some tightness in your chest, or you have that momentarily like, what am I doing in this
Mhm.
place, in this room? So I'm curious for you if it's gonna, or should say when, because I don't think anybody never has it. When it comes up for you at this point in your life, what circumstance will it typically come up in? And when it does, how do you get yourself either back to center or really moving forward again?
It's an interesting question and happens a lot in entrepreneurial circles. And when I spot it, I don't like it. And sometimes I'll even call it out because I'm about honesty and it's about being transparent with what you're doing. My background in the film and TV business and as a producer and all that for 9 years is entirely about that. to be a successful producer, you're running around trying to sell projects and, oh, this person's interested in that and everybody's, oh yeah, I got this funding and this director. And 90% of the time, what they're saying has a vague element of truth, but isn't really what it is they're saying. Because in order to get attention, that's what people feel they need to do in that industry because everybody's trying to be something they're not or get to that next level of where they're
Hmm.
not at. And so, since being in that industry and seeing a lot of that, I'm all about like, I don't have that imposter syndrome in any aspect. If someone says, hey, but what about this? Or I'm like, I don't know, but let me find out for you. Or I have somebody to refer you to. It's not. I'm not trying to be anything I'm not or put out something about different. In fact, people are always like, Paul, you're such a great salesperson when you're talking to customers for stuff. I'm like, I'm not a salesperson. I'm just like, here's who we are, here's what we do, and it works for you or it doesn't. And it's all about whether something's a right fit or not, not about trying to sell somebody something.
Right.
It either is a match or it isn't. And all you can do is inform them about what it is you have or do or whatever. And it's up to them. You're not trying to emotionally or psychologically manipulate them or cram it down their throat or hit them 5 times before they break them down, before they like all these like old school used car salesman type techniques. To me, that sort of transparency and honesty is a better way than any level of this sort of imposter syndrome thing that's out there. In fact, I just had this investor complaining. We were on a call the other day, and he was complaining about how a lot of young people raising capital are always doing that. They're always like, oh, yeah, there's 2 weeks left in the raise, man, and I want to get you in on this raise before we close. And he's, yeah, and I see that guy 2 years later, and he's still raising. So stop it with the you got to get in now, trying to make me think that there's some kind of got to jump on before the opportunity closes. Like
Silly
people who've been
Paul.
around the block see through that. And
Yeah. All right. But okay. So I have a couple of follow-up questions because I'm intrigued. So one of the things that you said that you're currently doing is working with celebrities who want to produce, manufacture, and sell products, right? Is there no celebrity that you've met or talked to, or maybe you're talking to business managers at this point, I don't know, where you have felt a little like the power structure is not equal? I love
no,
that. So talk a
no.
little bit more. Why?
And because they're just people who just have a certain career path or whatever. They're people who are trying to achieve something, like they want to launch a brand and launch a product. So they'll come in and have this idea, and I'll be like, can I give you some advice? I don't think that idea is going to work, and here's why. This, but what if we took your passion for this category where your idea is in, and let me show you something innovative in this category from this food scientist or chemist or material scientist or inventor, or whatever, from the different businesses I have a bit. And they'll be like, yes, that, let's do that. And 10 out of 10 times that's happened. And one of the fascinating things is their agents and managers love it because they can't tell them no, but I can. So they love bringing me in because I'm not blinded by that. I look at them as here's what you want to achieve. You want to leverage the eyeballs you have. You want to build a business that's fun, interesting, cool. You want to have legacy income beyond your 15 minutes or 30 minutes of fame or whatever that you have. And usually that's the scenario. So that's the thing to tackle. It's not about, oh, you're a legend or whatever. And I've even stuck my foot in my mouth sometimes talking to like big famous people about stuff, but it's just people being people. And so the biggest A-lister that comes in, I'm gonna talk to them as if they're anybody. We're here to try and solve something, not for me to try to fawn over you as a fan or whatever. So I would say no, and yeah, because it's not helpful for me. Now, afterward, I may go to my kids, like, hey, you ever heard of so and so? I'm like, oh my gosh, they're here. And then I'll be like, oh, that's cool that I met them. And, my kids had fun that I met that person. But it's not like for me, it was just like, oh, this is just a business thing I'm working on. The one exception to that is somebody who has achieved some real huge achievement in their field. Like, I've met like a world champion person in their sport and somebody who's achieved that level, there's something fascinating about the way their mind works that I actually could see and feel. in the room talking to them. And I pointed that out to them. I'm like, you have a different champion mindset, even different than professional, like pro athletes, like in your field. There's a different way in which you're talking about things, looking at it, analyzing it. And I'm like, I'm fascinated to like tap in. And I think they appreciated that I like spotted that aspect of the way they were looking at their brand and their product. And it was cool, like for to see that. But that wasn't about them as any sort of celebrity. It was more about there was just a way they viewed things that was so sharp and precise. Like you could tell that's what led them to be the
Mhm.
best in their field globally.
That's very cool. All right. Okay, so I'm just going to go totally off script here and ask you, you've talked a lot about celebrities, TikTok, right? Like partnering with these executives from China for TikTok. So assuming that TikTok continues to live in the United States at least, what do you think is next for the creator economy?
I think the biggest shift is one that's not even really talked about a lot. I'm talking about a lot, but it's based on even this venture studio that I'm doing for these A-list celebrities and creators that want to be entrepreneurs and have consumer products brands. Part of it is I think a lot of them realize when you look at where eyeballs are. I have two teenage daughters. They don't watch Saturday morning cartoons on network television like I did and learn about products from commercials. Doesn't exist anymore, really.
Yeah,
Where do they learn about products? Where are their eyeballs? They're watching YouTubers and TikTokers, and
right.
then the people who do that content are the ones that are influencing them on product. And there's a unique difference in marketing that's happened with that than has ever happened in existence. And that is, and the best example I use always is Mr. Beast, even though he's the most followed person on YouTube. But it was a couple of years ago, he did a video all about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. In his warehouse, he built chocolate rivers and giant Mentos and soda. And it was a bunch of funny, really entertaining bits, just like a lot of his content is. And he had some more viewers than the Super Bowl and some of these things. But at the same time, he was launching a chocolate company. Feastables. So you're like, and the chocolate eating contest where it was featuring Feastables. So he had built in a commercial, ostensibly, into the entertaining content that he normally does. And so now, when a consumer or fan would go and see his product in the store, not only do they have a certain awareness of it in a different way because it was embedded within the piece of entertainment, but they now want to buy it as a reward for the value of the entertainment enjoyment that they got from that person. And that level of connectivity between a fan or even a casual viewer and somebody who can embed, and it's not embed like was done in the Instagram era where you have a model like this selling your product, and that was not an endorsement of this beverage brand, but it's that doesn't work. The old product placement in TV shows, people pay a fortune for some product to be on the shelf in the back. Nobody cares. Embedded it as a piece of the actual entertaining content. If I were this brand and I had some YouTuber pouring it on somebody's head because they were a prankster or whatever, like actually make it part of the content. That level of marketing is unheard of, and the power of that's unheard of. And I think we're just at the very beginning of that integration of brands with the people who are creating the entertainment for
Mhm.
society. And now the people who are creating entertainment, rather than just getting paid to do that and embed it, can actually own the brand within that. That to me is the future. And there are a lot of big time investors. One of the biggest venture capital firms, he's actually said the future of consumer products is going to be driven by creator Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz. Said that. So the Gary Vaynerchuk's a big proponent
Right.
of that same thing where they're seeing that same thing. Like if you follow where eyeballs are, where people learn about product and now recognize that side of it is seeing, oh, I this is how I build legacy income. In fact, some of this started, I think, moving in that direction too, when you saw some people who were super successful and made a ton of money in their normal career go and get involved in a brand in a deeper way than just promoting, but they owned a piece of equity or whatever as part of their deal, even a tiny piece, made more money doing that than in their entire career where they were like an A-list person. 50 cent in vitamin water or like some of the things that aren't even so overt, but people who've made hundreds of millions of dollars behind the scenes being a part of something. And it's even true as investors, celebrities who recognize the power of this economy, of what's happening to the creator economy, athletes, celebrities, rock stars, because they see it and they know the power of their own audience, they're investing in others within that industry who are doing this. And so that, to me, is also a shift where people who understand this are going to do well participating in it, either as an active operator or investor or whatever. The people who stick to the old ways of doing things, it's going to pass them by. And we're at the very beginning of this shift.
Very cool. Paul, thank you so much for just talking to me today because we've been all over the map. But I think actually you provided some really great, interesting, different points of view today and shared your expertise with us, which again, very enjoyable for me, but I know also for the audience. So thank you
Great.
very much.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So this is Kim Miller-Hershon, Kim Miller-Hershon Coaching and Consulting. You have been listening to Unconventional Wisdom about conventional wisdom with my guest, Paul Shrater. And Paul, give your website, please. It'll be in the show notes too.
You can find the companies I mentioned at paulshrater.com. That's SHRATER.com. But minimusproducts.biz is our contract packaging facility. Minimusfulfillment.biz is our 3PL fulfillment business. Digitalcommerceagency.com is a TikTok marketing agency. So anywhere I can be of help for anybody, always happy to talk to folks.
Love that. Thank you so much. And from my point of view, I have two things I would love for you to do today. One is subscribe to the newsletter, which people have said they are enjoying. You can find it either sign up on my website, kimmillerhershon.com, or you can just go to LinkedIn. We're posting it up there. The second thing is that if this idea about unconventional wisdom is interesting to you and you'd like to know a little bit more about how do you implement it for yourself, like what are some of the particulars that you can do, I'm offering a free webinar. The info will be in the show notes and come join me and let's talk. Those are my two things. And last word, go out there and be a better human.
Where cliches come to retire. Drop that beat, turn down to fire. Say what's real, make fears take a seat. Unconventional wisdom, dancing on your feet.